Welcome to Fight News Now Extra. I am John Pollock, and we have a packed day of news with the introduction of the UFC's new drug policy with all of the details and the announcement of 2 pending title fights for later this year. We're going to chat all of this news with John Ramdine and Robin Black coming up on today's show. The UFC unveiled its athlete marketing and development program on Wednesday, which in a nutshell is going to change the landscape in radical fashion. The UFC is handing over all of the drug administration duties to the United States Anti-Doping Agency, better known as USADA. Random testing will be conducted year-round, 24 hours a day, with a minimum of 2,750 tests to be conducted annually. They're going to be testing for both blood and urine and have the ability for CIR testing. Substances caught, such as steroids and HGH, will result in a 2-year suspension for a first offense, with 2 additional years if they find there to be aggravating circumstances with the failure. UFC President Dana White appeared on UFC Tonight on Wednesday and confirmed that middleweight Luke Rockhold will be the next one to challenge Chris Weidman for the middleweight gold. White stated that the date and location have not been finalized as of yet. The clock is ticking for New York to vote and pass a bill to legalize the sport, and have to do so before the current session ends this month. The UFC has booked a December 5th date for Madison Square Garden if the bill goes through and is passed. And White also stated that it appears Alexander Gustafsson will be getting the next light heavyweight title fight against Daniel Cormier rather than Ryan Bader, as most had expected. The title shot for Gustafsson is not set in stone as of yet, but he is coming off a loss this past January to Anthony Johnson, while Bader has won his last 4 fights. Saturday night, we're going to be presenting our own fights, but prior to that, we have our 1-hour preview show at 7 p.m. Eastern Time with John Ramdine, Robin Black, and myself. Keep it locked on Fight Network at 8 p.m. as we will present 4 fights from New Orleans, Louisiana, including Sean Jordan and Derek Lewis in heavyweight action. And I am with John Ramdine and Robin Black, a panel that will test clean every time. I almost said positive there.
Depends on for what.
I'm very positive.
Well, let's chat about the UFC's new drug policy. Essentially now, if you are a fighter, you are going to be on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You have to alert USADA where you are at all times. And if they come to find you 3 times a year and you're not there, that will result in a suspension. This is pretty heavy duty. They've handed everything over to USADA. UFC is putting their hands up. Hey, we have nothing to do with this. This is all them, which I commend them for doing, actually. But this is going to be a radical change. It's always going to be a cat and mouse game with people trying to get around drug testing, but this is a pretty significant leap forward.
Yeah, true. For the sport of mixed martial arts, we want this thing to be as clean as humanly possible. But I'm interested to know the fighter's perspective on everything that's going on with the drug testing and everything with the sponsorship deal. If you're going to compete at the highest level, being the UFC, looking for the biggest dollars, do you want to compete under the strict rules that is the UFC with their sponsorship and now their drug testing?
Actually, that's a great job connecting those two. What do they have in common? We're going to try to be a top-level professional league. That's what we're going for. We got to go. If you fail a drug test, get the out. And by the way, you're wearing these uniforms just like every other one. It's a hard thing to try to incorporate all that and say we're making that next step, because you're going to have a lot of people hate it, you're going to have a lot of pushback, but I think they're at a point of being strong enough and powerful enough and ingrained enough in the mentality that people will do it.
And it's new waters for them. It's like, obviously, if they want to be as legitimate as humanly possible, this is the thing that the UFC needs to do, because right now the casual fan base looks at the UFC as the sport of mixed martial arts. So they have to take the lead, they have to spend the money, they have to do everything they need to do.
And a lot of money.
This is not
a cheap program. And you bring up 2 points in the Reebok deal and this drug testing, and I think both have pretty much different reactions. With the Reebok deal, a lot of fighters feel very restrictive. A lot are losing money on it. Whereas the drug testing, I think most look at it as a positive, pardon the pun, because if you're a clean athlete, this is a godsend.
Yes.
Finally, they're going to be enforcing, and I don't have to go into a cage with the knowledge that I am fighting someone dirty. But at the same time, none of these things there was no collective bargaining. Like, this would never fly in any sport with a union or an association. I mean, this was largely, it was just UFC said, this is what we're doing, and you will follow suit. It's to me, a powder keg is forming where the days of these fighters being independent contractors, it's just, you can't, with any reasonable facts, label them as such. They're being told, we are literally telling you, we need to know where you are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and when you show up, you're going to wear what we tell you to wear.
Yeah,
and their paychecks aren't reflecting the fact that they are, being looked after by Big Brother, so to speak.
This is all thinking about the future. We can't have people coming out, if you check out this documentary, a little short documentary by Bobby Razik on Mark Kerr, The Smashing Machine.
I was watching it
Great
today.
stuff. Great stuff. Razik makes great films. And it talks about what the effect of that era of drug use and all of that had on him, how that led to other drug problems, and it's all somewhat connected. So we're going to deal with stuff like that. That's the future. We're not going to deal with that. The Reebok deal is the future. We're going to be a bigger league. Who's in favor of both of these things? Young fighter B fighting at Global Warriors up in Burlington, Ontario. He's 9-1. He's in favor of both. He can't afford steroids like the top rich guys who have rich doctors, and he's only making $500 worth of sponsorship anyways. Now, when he goes to the UFC, the next generation of good fighters, they get $2,500, which they weren't getting. They know they don't have to fight a guy who's on steroids, who's can afford a better doctor, and they're part of a big league. So this is all thinking about the future. The guys who hate it are the proven pros who built this sport. But the guys who like it are the next wave.
Last thing before we wrap up, Dana White announcing, not really surprising that Luke Rockhold will get the next title fight with Chris Weidman. The one that is more contentious with people is the fact Alexander Gustafsson, it appears, will get the title fight over Ryan Bader.
People are nuts.
I don't really have an issue. I feel that if you are upset about this, then you have to look me in the eye and say if Ryan Bader and Gustafsson were to fight, that you're picking Ryan Bader in that fight. I think it's pretty much... whoever is a bigger draw, I think it's pretty much the same. Sure, and personally, I think Gustafsson has a much better shot at beating Cormier.
And he filled the stadium in Sweden.
I agree 100%. But I think because the whole situation that happened at the press conference with Ryan Bader, that added to the interest of Ryan Bader. Because I'm stunned that people are actually supporting Ryan Bader over Alexander Gustafsson, but it's a part of the game right now. As soon as you create interest, and there's even if the conflict's manufactured, people are in.
This whole thing is one more nail in my coffin of it ain't about pure sport anymore. The whole conversation, this guy built up some heat, and that guy's...
that's true.
Hey, Ryan Bader's on a winning streak. You're supposed to be able to fight for the title. No dice, not anymore.
All right, he's Robin Black, John Ramdine. I'm John Pollock. Stay tuned for more of Fight News Now Extra.